The reason why we're having this conversation, recently I had posted something that you responded to that speaks to the experience that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So the topic that we're going to discuss is what that moment was like being in the ultrasound room and in the time of a confirmed miscarriage. And that's something that both you and I have experienced. And so this is what we're going to talk about specifically. But what I really wanted to say before we even dove into the conversation is to publicly once again express to you, but in public this time, my gratitude for being willing to want to have this conversation. And I love in particular what you said. If it helps somebody else, then you are all for it.
Yeah.
And this is what this video is all about. This is what this platform is all about. And this is what guys like you and I are all about.
So yeah, it's actually, I realized I was talking with my wife yesterday, and I think today is a year, I think to the day, since we went and had that ultrasound. And so that was our first pregnancy, and we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what to expect. And she felt like something wasn't right. And my natural go-to is trying to find silver linings and be positive. So I'm there trying to encourage her the best I can. No, it's all going to be fine. I really believe it's going to be okay. And it at the same time, just really not knowing how to listen to her and be supportive of what she knew was going on. And so that was why it was Thanksgiving week, so it was almost impossible to find somewhere to go and do an ultrasound. And we found this little doctor's office type place that had a machine. And so we were like, all right, if they can fit us in, we'll go. And yeah, I remember it was just a really warm, dark room. And they sat us both down on this big couch bed thing. And I remember like the sinking feeling when they couldn't find a heartbeat. And like the images showed that there should have been something there, and there was no heartbeat. And I remember that the technician was like, had that like look on her face of like, so sorry. And I still didn't want to believe that something was wrong. And I don't know, it was like having your feet cut out from under you. It was just devastating. So
Let's talk about the moment that she told you that she was pregnant. Describe to me what that moment was like for you, and how did that impact your imagination, and how did that impact you emotionally?
I remember it was, we're not young, so it's like we didn't know if we would be able to get pregnant or have a baby. I mean, we're both in our late 30s, which I guess is not old, but it's not like in your 20s. So
Come on, man, we're young. Okay.
when we found out, it was like all of this hope and excitement that I didn't know I had or wanted, like exploded. And it was like we were just like, oh, we got to tell family, we got to come up with baby names, like let's turn the office into a nursery, all that stuff that I feel like most people, that's where they go. But also on another level, for me, it's like, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I was going to be married and pregnant at that time, I would have called you crazy, because that just wasn't where I was. And so it was like a whole area of my brain and my heart that I didn't, not that they were like shut off, but just that I'd never gone to, was like all of a sudden all the lights were turned on, and it was like hope and excitement.
It's like that part of you was dormant,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it just woke up,
Mm-hmm.
and it has all this appetite for this life that you're now expecting.
Yeah.
So now take us to the ultrasound room. You're in there. The heartbeat is not found.
Mm-mm.
What do you remembering, and what has been foggy to you since that moment?
So I don't know. I remember weird details. We were in Florida visiting her family because they all live down there, and I remember it was weirdly cold and rainy that day because we're in the Tampa area. It's never cold, and it was cold and rain. We were both wearing jackets, and I just remember it was just the grayest, miserable day outside. And it was also really dark in the ultrasound room, and I don't know, I just felt like this ominous feeling over the whole day. And I don't know if it was because deep down I knew what was going on and I didn't want to. But I just remember, like I said, sitting on that little couch and holding my wife's hand and trying not to cry and trying to stay positive. And we both just went, and afterwards we sat in the car in the parking lot in silence, basically for several minutes. Just everything was hitting us all at once, I think.
Describe, if you can, hearing that there was no heartbeat in that ultrasound room. What happened to that part of you that had been awakened in that ultrasound room?
So earlier I compared it to this room in the corner of my mind and my heart that I just never went into, and all of a sudden all the lights were turned on and you could see all the possibilities and the hope. And I think that it was pretty much the opposite sitting in that room. It was like all of a sudden all the lights were turned off, but you're in an unfamiliar space and you don't know where to go. So it was scary. It was overwhelming. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room. It was just dark in all the ways, not just physically, but it was just dark.
What helped you get through that moment?
I think I had to try to muster some extra hope and positivity for the sake of my wife. That not that it was falsified, but just the realization that even though this is a terrible, terrible thing, we still had each other, and we were going to figure out how to be okay and how to work through and process and heal together. And so I think in some ways it helped us to forge more parts of our relationship that maybe weren't there before. It just in communication and in the way that we both help each other through the grief process. Because I don't come from a heavily emotional family. It's not like we all sit down and cry together on normal occasions. And so it's kind of like, again, another room that I didn't really ever go in that much. And so now I'm forced in there and had to figure out how to be in there, and that it was okay to be in that room. It wasn't a place like that you just leave, but to actually like walk through the sea of grief in a healthy way, not turn to coping mechanisms or whatever in unhealthy situations, but to actually grieve and to actually be okay feeling all those feelings.
Have you and your wife gotten to the point of talking about what the meaning of this miscarriage, what it means to both her, what it means to you, the way that you guys were feeling, perhaps that she wasn't aware of, that you weren't aware of? Have you been able to have that level of continued or a one-time conversation since?
So, yeah, like I said, I think that I'm just super blessed to have a wife who's very open and communicating, and also supportive of me in the grief process. And that I think that one of the positives that came out of it in our relationship was just the realization that there are hopeful things and things to dream of and look forward to, but also that life throws you some really terrible things sometimes, and you have two choices: either to get beat down by it or to learn from it and try and help others with it. And so that's why when you talk to me about doing this, like I said, if what I have to say can help anybody else who's sitting in that dark room to at least turn on a flashlight or something, just to continue the metaphor, if it can help anybody in any way, I'm all for it. Because I know I had some really good, really supportive friends who were there in a heartbeat. And even if they didn't know what to say or what to do, just being there, washing dishes, buying lunch, like whatever it was. Because sometimes in that grief process, you don't even want to get off the couch. And I know we have friends that lived hours away, several states away, that would call in an Uber Eats for us and have lunch delivered. And like, it sounds like a really small thing, but it really isn't. So the little stuff like that really helps. So being able to be a voice of hope for somebody else is a huge thing for me.
I want to acknowledge the fact that you and I are now having this conversation in real time, a week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so we're in this festive season where we have Thanksgiving in a week, and before you blink, Christmas is right around the corner. I jokingly call this Mariah Carey season.
Yeah.
Right, because you have all of the Christmas stuff and Thanksgiving stuff, and Christmas music has been playing everywhere you go. So there's this extra emphasis on togetherness and family and celebration and joy. It almost goes without saying, you don't want to be a Debbie Downer. You don't want to be a party pooper. You don't want to be the one to bring the mood down because you're sad or you're grieving or anything like that. The season as it's built doesn't lend itself to, it doesn't create a space for people like yourself a year ago who were going through this very devastating event so close to the holidays.
Yeah.
So take some time to talk specifically to a father who is going through what you went through in this season right now. How did you get through that season? What are one or two or three things that you would recommend he either thinks about, sets in place, considers to help him go through this season of celebration while experiencing this devastation?
Yeah. So I think this was especially important for us because it was 5 or 6 days before Thanksgiving dinner that we lost the baby. So it was still so fresh. Or I guess not even that for us. It was very fresh. And so it's being that close to the actual holidays, it's like that anniversary is always going to be there. And our wedding anniversary is the November 23rd. So it's extra, like this year it's on Thanksgiving Day. And so all of that is compounded into this little bubble of a knot, basically. How do you untie all of that? And I would say for somebody who is going through maybe their first holiday season with this added weight, a couple of things that I would say is it's okay to take time and space for yourself. Don't let other people's expectations on you keep you from your healing process. And also listen to your needs and your partner's needs in if they need to leave. I mean, if you gotta go, you gotta go. I've always said in a lot of different scenarios, but specifically this one, that boundaries are a form of love. And especially with family, if they can't understand that you just need a little time and space because you're going through this horrible thing, then that's not on you. You still got to do it. And so I feel like we were really blessed in our situation that we had people around us who understood that. Like I said, some family members have gone through it before, and I think with my family, we were at Thanksgiving dinner for 2 or 3 hours, and then we just left. We just had to go, and everybody understood. And it's not always like that. Sometimes people just want you to be there and be positive and full of whatever holiday cheer. But from somebody who sometimes forces that when I don't need to, it's okay to not be cheerful and to take the space you need to grieve and to process.
Man, I can't thank you enough for the level of transparency and for really diving deep into what this experience was like for you and what it continues to mean, especially now coming to the year anniversary mark of it. Two final things before I let you go. The first one is coming close to the year anniversary. How are you and your wife planning or not planning on commemorating, remembering the life of this baby who was lost?
Yeah.
Have you guys spoken about doing anything in particular? Is that something that is even on something that you've discussed before or anything like that?
I mean, really, no, actually, that now that I think about it, we haven't really talked much about what we're going to do. I know there will be tears. I know there will probably be some hopeful laughter and joy. And both of those things will probably be on and off for a while. But I hope that it's more of a time of reflection on the positive, but also holding that space for grieving what could have been but wasn't, and what was that hurt. Like there's a whole lot there that we're still unpacking. I feel like I'm super kind of surprised that I've gone through this whole conversation without any tears so far, because it was probably 6 months straight of just randomly driving down the road, having to pull over in a Walmart parking lot and cry, and that's okay. That's part of the healing process. So anybody that hears this, it's okay to just sit and cry for a little while when a random song lyric hits you from the radio, or when you just think about what you were hopeful for. Like, I think those are good healing tears. And so I hope that as we come up on our 1 year mark, like I hope that there's some grieving tears, but also some hopeful tears, and just a celebration of the things that this whole process has awakened in both of us. The gratefulness for that part of me that had the lights turned on that I didn't even know about, and that hopefully that part stays illuminated.
The last thing I'm going to ask you is taking a step way back and just looking at the totality of this conversation that we've just had, that's really in summary form everything that you've been going through and that you've gone through over the past year. Keeping in mind that there is a person who will be looking at this who is in the present going through their own loss experience to miscarriage, as well as someone who perhaps is looking at this now and is finding everything that you and I have said valuable, and have not yet experienced their loss, and perhaps will return to this video, unfortunately, because they have experienced the loss.
Yeah.
So what would be one or two to three things that in meta summary form, counsel that you would give these two men that we have in mind,
Mm-hmm.
in order to help them find their footing, if you will?
Well, I think that a lot of times as men, whether it's through culture or actual instruction or whatever learned behavior, we're taught that you have to be tough, you got to be firm and strong. And I think that I would say that especially in this process and this time, that's just not a thing. Like, it's just not true. It's okay to walk through the grief process. It's okay to cry. It's okay to lean on other people, to ask for help, to set boundaries. Those things aren't weakness. Those things are life. Those things are part of the grief process, part of the healing process. So I would say that's number one, is it's okay to not have it all together. Because even if you put on the facade like you have it all together, you don't. As having been in that room, having been through this process, you know you don't have it all together, even if you look on the outside like you do. So it's okay to let people see reality. It's healing. The other thing I would say is, don't let this drive a wedge between you and your partner, because I know grief can do that a lot. And just trauma and painful experiences can do that a lot. And I would say find ways to strengthen the relationship through the process. Lean on each other a lot. Sometimes it's going to be you holding your partner while they cried. Sometimes it's going to be vice versa. Sometimes it's going to be just sitting and talking about what you hoped the future would have been like. And that's okay. It's okay to have those, to hold those possibilities and those little glimmers of light. That's also, I think, part of the process. So I think those would be the two things. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have it all together, and to just find ways to strengthen your relationship through this whole process.
If there is anyone who would like to get in contact with you, because part of what you said, part of your story resonated with what they've been thinking or feeling or experiencing, how can they reach out to you?
I would say probably they can email me. I can say my email if that helps. It's Mark Goodwin 85@gmail.com, and just send an email, or we're connected on Instagram, I think, and so I can post something on there, and just that way they can find me through that also. And if they need to get in touch with me through you, that works too.
Mark, thank you so much, brother, for really opening up and taking us into this small aspect of your experience.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of my story. It's I realized I haven't actually publicly shared any of that story except with friends and family. So it's good to be able to just talk through stuff. I think that's a helpful thing for anybody, really. So I'm honored to have the privilege to do this. And anytime you want to have another conversation, I'm right here.
Yeah, same. Likewise.
Right.
Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.